Welcome to the Explainer. Sometimes you see a technical checklist for something like an SAP S4 HANA migration, and it just looks, well, kind of dry, right? But what if I told you that list is actually a treasure map? Today, we're going to transform that list into what it really is, a strategic guide for a massive business quest. So, let's get started.
Because really, that's the heart of it. This isn't just about a routine IT update. Moving to S4HANA is a fundamental leap. It changes how you operate, how you see your data, and how you make decisions. It's a jump into a faster, smarter future. But you don't take a leap like that without knowing exactly where you're going to land. So here's our game plan for today. We'll start by framing the quest, then we'll map out the technical terrain. After that, we'll size up our crew and cargo, which is our users and data. Then we'll get to the why, our business goals, before checking our specialized gear, and finally, we'll put it all together in our feasibility blueprint.
Look, any big adventure, any quest, starts with preparation. And a migration to S4HANA is a huge adventure. The very first thing you have to do before you take a single step is figure out if the journey is even possible and what it's going to take. That right there is your feasibility check.
And I really want to drive this home. This is not about just ticking boxes. This checklist is your map. It makes you ask all the tough questions right at the beginning. It turns what could be a messy pile of technical details into a clear, strategic plan that's going to guide every single decision you make from here on out.
Okay, so first things first on our quest. We need to map the terrain. You absolutely have to know your starting point before you can even think about the destination. And that means taking a really good, hard look at your current system. And what's so cool about this is how these simple-sounding questions uncover so much. Knowing you're on an Oracle database, that immediately tells you which tools you'll need. A single global instance? Well, the good news is you don't have to merge different systems. The bad news? The one you have is enormous. And being a Unicode system? Oh, that is a huge win. If it wasn't, you'd be looking at a whole separate project just to get ready for the main event.
All right, next up, we've got to take stock of our crew and our cargo. In other words, who's coming with us on this journey and what are we bringing along? For a business, that translates to your users, the people who are going to be impacted, and the massive amount of data you need to move. First, the crew. We're talking about 3,000 SAP users. And that is not just a number, That's 3,000 people whose jobs, whose daily routines are about to change. That number alone defines the entire scope of your training and change management. It's huge. And what about the cargo they're carrying? A 4 terabyte production database. The sheer size of this thing directly impacts your timeline, how much downtime you'll need, and the kind of hardware you need to throw at it. But it's not just about how big it is. It's also about its history. You're looking at 5 years of active data in the system. And this brings you to a massive fork in the road. Do you try to bring all 5 years of that history with you, or is this the moment to finally decide what's essential and what can be archived and left behind? That's a huge strategic decision. Okay, so we know where we're starting, and we know the scale of our crew and cargo. Now we have to ask the most important question of all. Why? Seriously, why are we doing this? Because a technical project that doesn't have a clear business reason behind it is just a project that's destined to fail. And this quote? It just says it all. This is the why. The business isn't pounding the table asking for a new database. No way. They're asking for smarter reports, for data they can actually trust, and for the ability to close the books at the end of the month way faster. These are real-world outcomes that make the whole thing worthwhile. And that leads to this critical point. Who is sponsoring this whole quest? In our example, it's business-driven. And that's key. When the business is in the driver's seat, the focus is all about return on investment, speed, getting a leg up on the competition. If this was just an IT-driven project, the focus might be more on, just modernizing the system. Having business sponsorship keeps the project laser-focused on what really matters.
All right, we've got the lay of the land. Now it's time to check our specialized gear. We're getting into the nitty-gritty SAP details now. The kind of stuff that can be the difference between a smooth journey and hitting a massive, unexpected roadblock.
Here is a perfect example. Are you using the classic general ledger or the new general ledger? I know it sounds technical, but the answer to this one question completely changes your migration path.
So, what is new GL anyway? Well, to put it simply, it's just a more modern way to structure your books, bringing everything together into one unified financial view. The fantastic news for this project is that they are already on new GL. This is a massive head start. It makes the path to S/4HANA's financial structure so much smoother. If they were on the classic GL, they'd be looking at a whole separate complicated project just to get ready.
And here's another piece of that specialized gear we need to check, your profitability analysis, or what we call COPA. Are you using the costing-based kind or the account-based version?
So COPA is basically the tool you use to figure out which parts of your business are actually making money. S/4HANA really prefers the account-based version because it connects directly to your main financial books. For this project, the plan is actually to use both side by side, which is a pretty common and really powerful strategy in S/4HANA. And so, after working through all of these questions, from the high-level landscape down to the super specific SAP settings, we finally arrive at our destination for this phase, a complete feasibility blueprint.
And there you have it. That's the whole process in a nutshell. You analyze your landscape, you assess the scale of it all, you define your business goals, your why, you review all the specific settings, and you put it all together to build your migration blueprint. It's a really logical flow that takes you from the 30,000-foot view right down to the detailed plan.
And that, right there, is the main thing to remember. This whole process might feel like you're just filling out a long questionnaire, but it is so much more than that. It's the disciplined, careful planning that makes the difference between a successful expedition that transforms your business and one that gets hopelessly lost in a forest of technical problems and blown budgets.
So, let's say your feasibility check is done. Your map is drawn, the destination is clear. Now the real journey begins. So what's the very first step on your roadmap? Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.